Have you studied regarding governing in any of the courses, even in fluid machines? Hello?
Yes, sir.
You have studied, no? Yes or no? Hello?
Yes.
So can anybody tell what is governing? Can anybody tell so in which course have you studied it? In some applied mechanics? In applied mechanics course or fluid machines? Hello? In which course did you study?
We have not studied.
You have not studied it. Okay. So governing, actually it is taught in sometimes in mechanisms also, and or machine element, and it is important for any of the power producing machines, whether it is internal combustion engine or a hydraulic turbine or a steam turbine. It is important. So you see, basically a big, let's say large thermal engine or heat engine that will be connected to some electric generator. And for the electric generator, we know this formula, particular formula, which I have written here. There is that NS is equal to 120 F by P. NS is the synchronous speed of the generators. Let's say one generator is attached to the steam turbine, and F is the frequency, P is the number of poles. So from electrical machine, we know this. Now, a typical case we can take that if there are 2 poles and our frequency, grid frequency is 50 Hertz, then the generator should run at 3000 RPM, and assuming that it is directly connected, or if it is also connected through some other mechanism with the turbine, then the turbine speed will be proportional to 3000 RPM, related to 3000 RPM, or maybe 3000 RPM if it is directly connected. Now, 3000 RPM is of course a very large amount of RPM for the machine, particularly for steam turbine. So the essence of this is that the RPM of the generator and RPM of the steam turbine, they are related. Now, if there is more load, suppose sometimes demand is more, then more current will be drawn, and then there is a tendency of the frequency to fall. So there should be some mechanism by which the frequency or the speed or the RPM should be kept constant as far as practical. And governor is a device by which it is done. So governor, how does it do it? It manipulates the steam flow rate to the engine or to the turbine, and then it does it. So basically then you see this is a very simple arrangement. Actual governor is much more complicated. Let's say there is some sort of a valve through which steam is coming to the turbine, and this valve is connected to this mechanism. And from the steam turbine shaft, we are taking, this is a bevel gear. So the RPM of the steam turbine is sensed, because we are directly from the shaft we have got a bevel gear. So with this bevel gear there is this bevel gear pair, and this is the another shaft. So this will rotate. Now what will happen? Either the shaft will rotate depending, if it is rotating at a constant speed, then there is no problem. We will have some sort of a valve opening. All right. We will have some sort of a valve opening. Now, if the shaft is rotating at a speed higher than the speed at which it should rotate, then what will happen? There are two balls, these fly balls, they are having some sort of a good amount of mass. So due to high speed of rotation, they will try to move away. And then this sleeve or this or this linkage where here there is a fulcrum, so that will try to move in the upward direction, this will try to move in the downward direction, and the valve will be more closed. So let's say the load is less, so then the turbine will be rotating at a high speed, and then this ball, they will fly away from the center, fly balls, and then this will move in the upward direction, this valve will move in the downward direction, so steam flow rate will reduce, and again the turbine will start rotating at its earlier speed. So the way I have explained, it is very simple, but you know that, I mean, in actual practice, it could be quite complex to make a precision control of the speed, and there should be some sort of feedback arrangement, etc. And it is done with the help of a servo system with some sort of oil hydraulic system. I will show you, but that is also a schematic. Next slide I will show you. So here, actual, how does it look? For a very small kind of a heat engine, this governor is shown. Okay, so this is some sort of automatic controller of a governor. Okay, or a governor. So generally, it controls the fuel. It will control the fuel for IC engine. It will control the steam for a steam turbine. It will control the amount of water going to a hydraulic turbine. Okay, this is how this speed is being controlled when there is a load variation. Up to this, do you have any question? Have you understood the basic principle? If not, please tell me. So governor, can you, I mean, is it clear? The working principle is clear. What is the purpose of the governor and what is the working principle? Of course, there are different kind of governor. It is kind of a fly ball kind of a governor or centrifugal governor. This is the name which is given. So I have explained the working principle. Do you have any question or any query at this point? Yes or no? Well, I assume that there is no. Please. Anything? No. So I assume that there is no question, but I have got certain question for you. First thing, tell me what is the difference between a flywheel and a governor? Do you know what is a flywheel? Hello? Anybody knows what is a flywheel? Tell yes or no.
No.
So you do not know a flywheel. Let me give some example. Then flywheel will be, the principle of flywheel will be clear. So flywheel, you have seen, all of you have seen flywheel. The very common example, crude but very common example, is the roadside cane juice extractor. Have you seen that people, the person, I mean, manually they rotate some sort of a wheel, and there is a roller between the two rollers. Sugar canes are inserted. Then from the sugar cane, juice is extracted. So there is a big flywheel. Why? Because that gentleman is continuously rotating it, and when sugar canes are there, there is a large resistance. So at that time, I mean, he has to give more energy or more force. And at other time when there is no sugarcane, so I mean, not energy is not needed. But flywheel is a device. If you continuously rotate it, then due to its inertia, it will store energy, kinetic energy it will store. So it will rotate with some sort of n RPM, and related to n RPM, it will have the kinetic energy stored within this flywheel. Then when you are putting the sugarcane and you need more effort, the stored energy that will come and do this work. So you have to give partial effort from your side, and partial effort you have given already, which is being stored or which has been kept stored within the system, that will come. So basically, when there is a fluctuating kind of a load due to your cycle itself, so we use flywheel, and flywheel will basically energy storage device. It will store the energy. When there is more need of energy, it will supply. When there is less need of energy, it will store. So can you tell us, I mean, can you tell that any other example where during a cycle there is fluctuation of demand during a particular cycle?
An engine, automobile engine.
Yeah. So automobile, internal combustion engine, etc. So there will be fluctuating load. So when there is power stroke, the flywheel will store energy, and when there is suction stroke or exhaust stroke, etc., so it will supply energy. So flywheel, the purpose of flywheel is like this. Or let's say there is a rotating device, and with this rotation you are creating some sort of reciprocating motion, and you are creating reciprocating motion of a punch. So you have got a sheet metal, the punch will make hole in this sheet metal. So you can understand that for part of the cycle, when it is punching the metal, it needs more effort. When it is moving up or coming down, it is not needing that much of energy. So flywheel will be very useful for this kind of punching machine also. Is not it? So flywheel will be there for many of the cases, but governor is something else. Governor, what it is doing, when there is a fluctuation in demand, it is not part of the cycle. But let's say, electricity is going to people and there is some sort of a fluctuating demand. So in that case, if there is a fall in speed, it will try to catch up the speed, and the means by which it will catch up the speed is either supplying more fuel or supplying more steam or less steam, whatever it may be, or controlling the water flow to the water turbine, hydraulic turbine. So in case of Pelton turbine also, there are governors are used. Okay. Now let me ask one question. Again, a common sense kind of a question, but general information for engineers. So who has invented or proposed flywheel? Again, very well-known name. So if you do not know it, it is James Watt. Why James Watt is famous?
Right. Steam engine.
Steam engine. So when he has made steam engine, so obviously you can understand that steam engine will have different kind of a load. Of course, at that time electrical machines were not there. So with steam engine, some sort of a load will be directly connected. And then if there is a speed fluctuation, he has made this. See, actually the schematic diagram of the governor, what I am showing in this slide, this is basically a Watt's governor. Okay, there are different designs, and this is just to make you understand that at least something is there called governor. But actual governor, you can understand that megawatt level, several 100 megawatt steam turbine is there, and there you are doing the governing, obviously this system has to be much more sophisticated and complex also. So we are just reading the basic principles. So there are different ways of governing. One is a throttle governing, then nozzle control governing, then bypass governing, and then there could be combination. Whatever I have told at the top, so we can have different combination of them. See, the figure which I have shown, that is basically a throttle governing. So a throttle governing, I will show another figure also, not a problem. So throttle governing, you see there is a valve, and this is the valve mechanism, this is the valve body, and this moves, has got a linear motion. So what you can see, the valve opening will be more or less. Basically this steam will be throttled. So what is the meaning of throttle? What is the throttling process? Can anybody tell what is a throttling process for any fluid? What do you mean by throttle? Throttle is a sudden reduction in pressure. So that sudden reduction in pressure could be by anything. There could be a small aperture through which fluid is forced. So there could be a sudden reduction in pressure. And if there is a valve and through the valve opening is small, fluid is passing. So that is also a throttling process. So basically in this throttling process, if we do the first law analysis, one can show that enthalpy before throttling and enthalpy after throttling, they are same. It is not that enthalpy remains constant during throttling. This is a misnomer. Enthalpy does not remain constant during throttling, but enthalpy before throttling and enthalpy after throttling, they are identical in many cases. And this is used in many devices. It is a very, easy control. So that's why throttling control is used. And also in refrigeration system, it is used for producing low temperature by throttling. So this is called Joule-Thomson expansion in case of, Joule-Thomson expansion in case of refrigeration. So throttling of steam will take place. That is one of the easiest control. But the problem is, if you do throttling, there is some sort of a drop in pressure and there are some irreversible losses. So obviously we are getting a control, gaining a control, but we are sacrificing certain amount of energy. We are incurring certain amount of loss or irreversibility. So next figure, let us see. So that is what I have told, that this is the throttle control. So generally the way I have shown, it is not done like this. There are oil hydraulic system. With the help of oil hydraulic system, this control is done. And here I have shown the control valve or throttle valve. Again, this is a very simplistic kind of a picture. Actual servo mechanism is much complex, which is used in a turbine. So you can understand, obviously, because turbine is such a big equipment and precise control is needed. So obviously we have got different kind of control mechanism. Only we are discussing the principle here. So throttle control is good, but the disadvantage I have already told, that we are incurring certain amount of loss, or we are creating some sort of irreversibility. So then we go for nozzle governing. As I have told, that nozzles are there. So if you consider the turbine to be a disc, and on the disc, periphery of the disc, there are blades. And again, before the blade, upstream of the blade, there are nozzles, and through the nozzle, steam is coming. When steam is passing through the nozzle, it is expanding and coming out as a high velocity jet, and then that high velocity jet is expanding through the turbine blade and producing power. So what we can do, we can without throttling, we can control the mass flow rate. So what is done, that there are just a minute, there are sets of nozzle, first set of nozzle, second set of nozzle, third set of nozzle. So we can close one set of nozzle, or we can open one extra set of nozzle like this. So this basically changes the mass flow rate, but not much effect on the pressure. This method governing is more efficient than the throttle governing, since in this method only the mass flow rate of the steam supplied to the turbine is controlled, but steam is available to the turbine almost at the same pressure and temperature at which it is being delivered by the boiler. The total number of nozzles required is divided into a number of sets like N1, N2, N3, etc. Each set consists of a number of nozzles required to affect the required control on the mass flow rate corresponding to the required power control. So basically, you see, this piston kind of a thing, when it will come, so it will actually close this path, and from this nozzle no steam will come. So something like that. It is a very simplistic way it has been shown, but basic principle is that either I will close this set or I will close this set like this. There are different arrangement. This is another arrangement where we are showing that how different sets of nozzle can be closed. So 4 sets have been shown. In bypass governing. Bypass governing is not as effective as in the the other governing I have discussed. It is some sort of emergency kind of arrangement that occasionally the turbine is overloaded for a short duration. During such operation, bypass valves are opened. So this is a bypass valve. So if this is open, so from here steam will come, and some steam will pass through this, and then pass through this. So basically it will bypass certain blades, but at the at the later stage, it will, some extra steam will pass through this. So occasionally the turbine is overloaded for short duration. During such operation, bypass valves are opened and fresh steam is introduced into the later stage of turbine. So originally, whatever steam is coming, along with that some extra amount of steam will come in the later stage of the turbine. This generates more energy to satisfy the increased load. Schematic of bypass governing is shown in figure 3. So, so you can understand that it is some sort of emergency kind of arrangement. And many a times the 3 types of governing which I have told, combination of them are used. There are more things regarding governing, but I just want to give you some idea that what is governing of a steam turbine. Governing is important, and it is also important. The governor, the first slide, whatever I have shown, the same type of governors are used in hydraulic machines and in internal combustion engine also. So it is just a small brief background to governing of steam turbine. Now we are coming to cooling water system. We are towards the, we have started from the boiler. If you can remember, we have started from the boiler and other kind of equipment in the boiler, though we could not go into much detail, but boiler and air flow path, water flow path, everything we have done. Then we have done the nozzles and turbines, etc. In between, we have done a little bit of this thing, feed water heaters, etc. So now really we have come to this end of the power plant. And here we are having another important system, which is called cold water system. So cold water or circulating cold water system, what is that? So you can see that. Let me have a small a description of the power plant once again. So this is the boiler. So this we can see the evaporator and steam drum. Then from the steam drum, saturated steam is coming, it is getting superheated, then it is going to the high pressure turbine. So from the high pressure turbine, steam is coming and that will be reheated, and part of it will go to the high pressure feed water heater. And after reheating, it will go back to the intermediate pressure turbine, and from there it will go back to the low pressure turbine. From the low pressure turbine, it has again shown that there is some sort of a feed water heater, and in between there is a deaerator, which is very important, I have told. And then ultimately from the low pressure turbine, it will go to the condenser. So in the condenser, it will be cooled with the help of water. If it is not a dry condenser, in very few places where water scarcity is there, steam is cooled with the help of air. Otherwise, it is cooled with the help of water. Cooled means condensed. So after that, the condensate will go to the cold water pump or circulating water pump, whatever it may be. Now, so the water cooling system, it consists of a condenser, and it will cold water pump, circulating pump it will have, and this water will go back to a cooling tower. So this is a cooling tower. In most of the cases in power plant, there is cooling tower. Earlier days, when the power plant sizes were small, very few power plant, then they used to take directly water from lake or river. But nowadays that is not there, almost it has been abandoned. So water will be making a circuit between the condenser and the cooling tower. So in the cooling tower, water will be sprayed, hot water from the condenser will be sprayed inside the cooling tower, and it will come in touch with air, where evaporation will take place. So when evaporation takes place, very small amount of water will get evaporated. So when evaporation takes place, the latent heat will be taken from the water itself, and water will get cooled. That cold water will go to the condenser. So basically, cooling tower is a multifunctional device. So what kind of device it is? It is a heat exchanger, and at the same time, it is also some sort of a device which preserves water. Okay. And then this makes the cold water circuit. Condenser, pump, cooling tower, that makes the circuit. And in between somewhere, though it has not been shown, that is also very important, there will be some sort of water treatment plant, so that the chemical impurities of water that can be taken care of, that can be reduced. So this is your cold water circuit. If you have got any question regarding cold water circuit, please ask me. Otherwise, I will proceed. Okay, let me ask. Could you understand the working principle of a cooling tower? What is the working principle of a cooling tower? Could you understand it?
Yes,
Anybody?
sir.
Huh? Hello? Somebody told yes. Can you tell me that what advantage you will get in cooling tower? What is the advantage? So in cooling tower, if time permits, I will discuss regarding cooling tower. Let me see. In cooling tower, air and water, they come into contact directly. And instead of that, we could have water passing through tube and air we could have passed over the tube with the help of a fan. Fan is also needed in a cooling tower. But we prefer that air and water, they should come in direct contact, and that's why cooling tower is used. Instead of using some sort of closed heat exchanger or indirect contact heat exchanger, we go for direct contact between air and water in cooling tower. And why we do this? Obviously, there is some sort of advantage. So can you tell me what is the advantage?
To increase the heat transfer rate.
Increase the heat transfer rate. Well, so let me tell you, actually, you can understand one thing, that cooling tower is the ultimate unit where we are disposing the heat to the sink, which is our atmosphere. Now, if I use some sort of a closed heat exchanger, pass air over the tubes with the help of a fan, and through the tube water passes, there is no contact between air and water, then according to second law, the minimum temperature of water which I can achieve is the dry bulb temperature of the air. But when air and water is forced into contact, there is some amount of evaporation of water, and then the latent heat is also taken. It is not only sensible heat transfer, latent heat is also taken from the water due to evaporation. I mean, for the evaporation, whatever latent heat is needed, that is taken from the water. And the minimum temperature of the water, what we will get, is the wet bulb temperature. According to the second law, that I can achieve the minimum temperature of water, which is equal to the wet bulb temperature. So wet bulb temperature is lower compared to dry bulb temperature. And if I use a cooling tower, then my circulating water temperature will be lower than the ambient temperature. Ambient temperature means dry bulb temperature. Is this point clear? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So if I use a cooling tower, then I get water temperature theoretically lower than the ambient temperature. Of course, for that I have to pay some penalty. What is the penalty I am paying? I am losing always some amount of water, which I have to replenish in the form of makeup water. Because water will evaporate along with air, it will go away. You can see some sort of a plume at the just a minute, at the top of the cooling tower. So here hot air and moist air will go away, taking some amount of water from here. So I am losing water, and that I have to replenish time to time. But that is very small, very, very small. Actually, a well-designed cooling tower will have less than 5%, around 3% of water loss. Okay, that means if 100 kg of water is being circulated let's say per hour, so 3 kg of water will get evaporated or will get lost per hour. Okay, so that 3 kg I have to replenish. Okay, so we have understood the cold water system, circulating cold water system. And where is that? So circulating cold water system, if I understand what is there, there is a pump. We will not discuss regarding the pump. So there is a condenser. We should discuss regarding the condenser, and cooling tower. If time permits, then we will discuss regarding cooling tower. So next we go to the condenser and cooling water system. So condenser is a device in which steam is condensed. Basically, we are talking about steam condenser, not the condenser of a refrigeration system, to water at a pressure less than atmosphere. Okay, Condensation can be done by removing heat from exhaust steam using circulating cooling water. Circulating air also it can be done, and in desert places, etc., there are dry condensers. During condensation, the working substance changes its phase from vapor to phase from vapor to liquid and rejects latent heat. The exhaust pressure in the condenser is maintained nearly 7 to 8 kilopascal, which is 7 to 8 kilopascal, which is much lower actually than the atmospheric pressure. One error here, this P should be capital. In SI system, other than the basic unit, all the other units are derived from the name of the scientists, so they are capital. Okay, so Pascal, so this should be capital, which corresponds to the condensate temperature of nearly 313 Kelvin. Again, Kelvin should have been capital. So 313 Kelvin means how much degree Celsius?
40.
40 degrees Celsius. So they have given more or less, in case of a tropical country, in our country, let's say whatever could be the temperature. That means steam temperature will be around 40 degrees Celsius. In summertime, it may be more. In winter time, it may be less. And then this is the picture. This is the picture if there is a counter current flow steam condenser, what it could be. Now, there are many condensers in a steam power plant. The main condenser from the turbine steam is coming, and then it is condensing. So from the turbine steam is coming and it is condensing. Just a minute. So this figure is important, but this is a generalized figure that when superheated steam is coming, then it is condensing and then it is being subcooled. When from turbine steam is coming, generally it is wet steam. So it will be somewhere from here, and there could be some sort of marginal subcooling. And this diagram where there is desuperheating, subcooling, and condensation and subcooling, this kind of diagram is valid, or rather it is relevant for feed water heaters, particularly high pressure feed water heaters. High pressure feed water heater, this kind of diagram is very relevant. So steam is extracted at superheated condition, then it is desuperheated, then condensation takes place, and then subcooling takes place. Marginal subcooling takes place. So with all these things, let us go to what are the different type of condensers are there. Two main categories of steam condensers are direct and indirect contact condensers. Okay, indirect contact condensers, particularly steam condensers, are called surface condensers also, because here the condensation takes place on the surface of the coolant tube, so it is called surface condensers. For large power plant, direct contact condenser. What is direct contact condenser? So let me tell you that water and steam, they are made to come in contact directly, and then that is direct contact condenser. In large power plant, main condenser, that means the exhaust steam from the turbine, that is condensed in surface condensers. Feed water heaters and deaerators are also condensers. This I have told already. And feed water heater could be direct or indirect type contact type, while deaerators are direct contact condensers. So direct contact condensers are these jet condensers, and these are different kind of thing. But we will not pay much attention, because you see that only we let us have the names, etc. Because these are for small plants, or for deaerator we can have this kind of condenser. The big condenser, what we call condenser in a steam power plant, that is the big condenser which comes out, which takes care of the steam which comes out of the turbine. So that is a indirect contact condenser or surface condenser. So there are different kind of designs for surface condensers, and this could be very, very big. Okay. Now let us make some sort of comparison between this direct contact condenser and indirect contact condenser. So people may think that, okay, direct contact condensers are good. They are good, that is, there is no doubt, but there are certain challenges also. Actually, you can understand that water is coming at a pressure higher than the atmospheric pressure because the pump is pumping it, and the steam that is coming at a pressure much lower compared to atmospheric pressure. Now, these two streams, when they will be directly brought into contact, so there is a pressure mismatch. So this is a good challenge for the equipment design. There is a pressure mismatch, and that is a good challenge for the, that is one thing. Another thing is that the way the indirect condenser can be controlled, particularly the water side, that cannot be done so well in case of a direct contact condenser. So only small units are there for direct contact condenser, and indirect contact condensers or surface condensers are much larger. So this shows some sort of direct contact condenser. Let me explain how does it work. So water comes, cooling water comes from here, and steam goes from here. So always we try to have, most of the cases we try to have some sort of counter current flow between air and water, water and steam. And that could be very good when water is introduced from the top and steam is introduced from the bottom. And that too, there should be a lot of obstacle in the path, so that, I mean, more time water and steam remains in contact. So basically it is designed in such a way so that steam will be totally condensed, and only the non-condensable gas that will go out, and mixture of water and the steam condensate that will be collected. Okay, so these are made of a larger height, so that I mean, there could be some amount of compression. Compression, why I am calling compression, and pressure matching already I have told, that from the turbine, the steam is coming at a pressure much below the atmospheric pressure. So its pressure has to be increased to atmospheric pressure. So that's why compression is needed, and that is done with the help of the water height. Okay, so please read the description over here, you will get something more. Then these are some of the other design where steam and water, they come in direct contact, and this kind of condensation takes place. So these are typically feed water heater and deaerator, etc. They are made of this kind of a design. So here also you see steam is moving in the upward direction, and there are plates, baffles, etc. to create obstacle, and water is falling from the top, so that water and steam, they make some sort of intense contact. Here also this counter current kind of a flow has been, I mean, that kind of a design has been provided. Okay, so this gives us some idea regarding how your direct contact condensers will work for steam and water. Next we come to surface condenser. So I have got a NPTEL course on heat exchanger. I have covered condenser to a very, I mean, to some extent, not to a very great extent, I should say, but to some extent. So if you like for some extra explanation, etc., you can see one lecture I have given here, some sort of link. Surface steam condensers are basically cell and tube type heat exchangers. It looks like this. This is a cell and tube heat exchanger with steam condensing outside this tube. So steam comes here, saturated vapor in. It is written saturated vapor, but it need not be saturated vapor. It could be superheated, or it could be even wet vapor, slightly wet vapor. And you can see that as the steam has got low density, so this inlet is very large. And steam should have very low velocity inside. So outside the tube, there will be steam, and then cooling water will come like this. It will pass through the tube, and it is a double pass kind of a thing. It has been shown, two tube pass. So it will pass through these tubes and go out. And the steam that will condense and get collected in the hot well, this is called hot well. Always in the steam condenser, there is somewhere where steam condensate can collect. So hot well, through the hot well, this condensed liquid will be taken out. Okay. So basically it is a cell and tube type heat exchanger, and do not think that this kind of condensers are there in power plant. This could be for a very small steam power unit or steam condenser. Actual power plant condensers are much bigger, and they do not have a cell like cylindrical cell. Hello, I am having a class. I will call afterwards. So they are having some sort of a cylindrical cell. Do not like that. They do not have a cylindrical cell. They have a box-like structure or a very large room-like structure, rectangular. Because those big cells, circular cells, cannot be produced. Okay. There are small condenser which are having circular cell. So one thing very important, let me tell this, and with this I will try to discuss something else, that actually here we are telling that steam is coming, but along with steam, air is also coming. And steam will condense, air will not condense. So continuously, if we make this steam to flow, more and more air will come, and at one point of time, most of the space will be occupied by air, and we will not be able to have good condensation. So we have to continuously extract air. As air and steam, they are coming, they are getting separated because steam will get condensed. Condensate is going out, and we have to also take out air. So continuously we have to go on pumping out air. So this is what we have to do, and there are air extraction point and there are air ejector. So we will elaborate on this point. But now a little bit of time is there. Let me discuss regarding the test. Actually, one of your friend has given or suggested that Sunday we should have one test, and coming Sunday. Before that you are busy, and Tuesday we can have one test. Beyond Tuesday I do not want to go because that will be difficult for you. Somebody suggested that we should have only one test, but again other people have suggested more tests because in one test people may not do well. And another thing, this subject is there are 5 classes, so I think both of us we have covered good amount of material. So if it is all right, of course I have to talk to Professor Sandipan Ghosh Maulik. Today itself I will inform you. So Sunday and Tuesday I will go. Sunday's test will be 1 hour test. Tuesday's test will be more than 1 hour, let me talk to Professor Ghosh Maulik if it is 2.5 or 3 hours test, whatever we come across. So we will inform you. So is that all right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So will the format for both the tests be the same?
Yeah, the way we have done, I will request Professor Ghosh Maulik also. You have already experienced one test. So similar kind of format we will do. Similar kind of format we will do.
So what will be the timing of the Sunday's test?
Huh?
What will be the
Sundays,
timing of Sunday's test?
I will inform, because you see, we are not only we are involved. This gentleman also means, what is that? Moodle people are also involved. But if you have got a preference, please tell me the preference.
So I have a test in the morning, like one more test in the morning on Sunday.
At what time?
So 9 to 11.
Okay. So then afternoon and evening are all right.
Sir, afternoon is better. So like I have a test in the evening, 7:30 to 9.
7:30 to 9.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So from 3 o'clock, if some test is there, is that all right? Sunday?
From 3 to whatever you wish. 3 to 4.
3 to 4.
Sir, we have class from 3.
Very well.
Day.
Actually, I just like to give you some sort of a relief. So what class is there from 3 o'clock? Okay, of course, knowing it will not help me. So what class is there?
So from 3:30 to 5, we have finite element analysis class.
Very well. Yeah. 3:30 to 5.
On Sunday?
Sunday. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Sunday you have got finite element class.
Yes, sir.
Afternoon will be better then.
So afternoon will be better, but he is telling. So I do not have a problem. So 2 to 3, tentatively, not tentatively, not much time and not much scope to change also. So 2 to 3.
2 3. Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
2 to 3. Okay. So let us have then on 2 to 3. I will talk to Professor Ghosh Maulik and fix it up. Okay. And talk to Moodle people also. Okay. All right. So let us meet at 4 o'clock. Whatever small thing we can do, we will do, and maybe we will say goodbye, at least for the sake of the class. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bruh, whoever is recording, please stop the recording.